The verdict sent shockwaves through the small town and beyond. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting how a 16-year-old girl had stood up to a corrupt system and won. Maya's face appeared on television screens and newspaper covers, her name becoming synonymous with courage and resilience. The courtroom victory wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a wake-up call for communities everywhere that had grown weary of unchecked power and injustice. For Officer Gray Harris, the consequences were swift and severe. Once celebrated as a model officer, he now faced intense scrutiny. Internal investigations uncovered a pattern of misconduct stretching back years. Complaints from black residents about excessive force, discriminatory remarks made during interrogations, and even tampered reports to cover his tracks. Within weeks, Harris was suspended without pay, and months later, he was fired altogether. His fall from grace served as a stark reminder that accountability could no longer be ignored. But Maya's journey didn't end with the trial. In the days following the verdict, she became an unexpected voice for change. Invitations poured in from schools, community centers, and activist groups eager to hear her speak. At first, Maya hesitated. She wasn't sure if she wanted to relive the pain of those months in detention or revisit the trauma of being labeled a criminal. Yet, when she saw the faces of other young people who looked like her, young black teens full of dreams but burdened by fear, she realized her story mattered. It gave them hope that they too could fight back against unfairness. Her first public speech took place at a local high school auditorium packed with students, parents, and teachers. Standing behind the podium, Maya began nervously but soon found her rhythm. "I'm not special," she told the crowd. "I'm just someone who refused to stay silent when it mattered most. If I can do it, so can you. Don't let anyone tell you your voice doesn't matter." Her words resonated deeply. Students approached her afterward, sharing their own stories of discrimination and hardship. Some promised to join protests. Others vowed to pursue careers in law or activism. Maya felt a sense of purpose she'd never known before, a calling to help others find their strength. Meanwhile, her family breathed easier knowing the nightmare was over. Marcus returned to work, grateful to have his sister home safe. Their parents, though still wary of the justice system, allowed themselves to dream again about brighter futures for their children. They encouraged Maya to finish high school and chase her passion for art, something she had almost given up on during her darkest days. As time passed, Maya channeled her experiences into creative expression. She began painting murals around town depicting themes of justice, unity, and hope. One mural, titled "Breaking Chains," showed a young girl standing tall despite the shadows surrounding her. It quickly became a symbol of resistance and healing, drawing visitors from neighboring cities. The impact of Maya's case extended far beyond her hometown. Activists cited it as proof that grassroots efforts, like Jamal's tech-savvy sleuthing and Sarah Chen's relentless advocacy, could expose systemic flaws and hold powerful figures accountable. Lawmakers proposed reforms aimed at increasing police transparency and addressing racial bias in law enforcement. While progress was slow, Maya's story reminded everyone why the fight was worth it. On quiet evenings, Maya would sit outside under the stars, sketchbook in hand, reflecting on everything she'd been through. She knew scars remained, not just hers, but those carried by countless others who had faced similar injustices. But she also knew this: every step forward, no matter how small, brought the world closer to fairness. Maya Johnson wasn't just a teenager anymore. She was a beacon of hope, a fighter for truth, and a testament to the power of speaking out, even when the odds seemed impossible. And as long as there were people willing to listen, her voice would continue to echo, inspiring generations to come. The courtroom was still buzzing with tension as Maya returned to her seat, her face flushed but resolute. The jurors exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier certainty shaken by the gas station footage, and Maya's heartfelt words. Officer Harris sat rigidly at the prosecution table, his once commanding presence diminished under the weight of doubt. It was clear that the trial had taken a dramatic turn. What had seemed like an open and shut case now hung precariously in the balance. Sarah Chen seized the moment, her voice cutting through the lingering silence like a sharp blade. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, pacing slowly in front of them, "you've just seen undeniable proof that contradicts Officer Harris's testimony. Let me ask you this. If Maya truly attacked him, why does the video show her stepping in to protect her brother? Why does it reveal Officer Harris escalating the situation without provocation?" She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "This isn't about one isolated incident. It's about accountability. Officer Harris has a history of misconduct, yet no one has held him responsible until now. Today we have the opportunity to change that. We can choose truth over convenience, justice over bias." The prosecutor scrambled to regain control, redirecting the focus back to Maya. "Regardless of what you saw in that video, ladies and gentlemen, Maya Johnson resisted arrest. She disobeyed orders from a law enforcement officer, a crime punishable by law. Her actions cannot be excused simply because she disagrees with how the situation unfolded." But Sarah wasn't finished. She turned to the jury again, her tone softer, but no less powerful. "Ask yourselves this. Would any of you remain silent if you saw someone you love being treated unfairly? Would you stand idly by while they were pushed around?" Maya acted out of fear and love, not malice or defiance. She is not a criminal. She is a young woman who refused to look away when something felt wrong. As Sarah wrapped up her argument, the room seemed to hold its breath. Judge Roberts instructed the jury to begin deliberations, reminding them to weigh the evidence carefully and avoid letting emotions cloud their judgment. The 12 men and women filed into the deliberation room, their faces unreadable masks. Hours passed, each minute stretching longer than the last. Maya sat anxiously beside Sarah, clutching her mother's hand tightly. Outside the courtroom, supporters gathered, holding signs that read "Justice for Maya" and "Truth Matters." Jamal paced nervously, checking his phone every few seconds for updates. Even strangers who had followed the case online waited anxiously, hoping for a verdict that would affirm fairness in a system often criticized for inequity. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the jury returned. The foreman stood, his voice steady as he delivered the verdict. "We find the defendant, Maya Johnson, not guilty on all charges." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. Supporters cheered, tears streaming down their faces as Maya collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing with relief. Sarah hugged her client tightly, whispering, "You did it. You showed them the truth." Officer Harris looked pale, his composure shattered as the reality of the verdict sank in. Reporters rushed to capture the moment, snapping photos and shouting questions. Outside, the crowd erupted in celebration, chanting Maya's name and waving banners high above their heads. In that instant, she became more than just a teenager fighting for her freedom. She became a symbol of resilience and hope. But Maya knew the fight wasn't over. As she stepped out of the courthouse, surrounded by family, friends, and strangers who believed in her cause, she raised her voice one final time. "This victory isn't just mine," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It belongs to everyone who has ever been told their story doesn't matter. We won today, but the work continues, for justice, for equality, and for a world where no one has to fight alone." And with that, Maya walked forward, ready to inspire others to keep pushing for change. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner as Maya stood in the center, her hands trembling but her voice steady. Every eye was on her. Jurors, lawyers, spectators, all waiting to see what this young girl would say. For a moment, she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Maya started, her voice soft but clear. "I'm not here to tell you I'm perfect. I make mistakes, just like anyone else. But I'm also not the person Officer Harris says I am. That night wasn't about me attacking him. It was about trying to protect my brother when I saw him being treated unfairly." She paused, looking directly at the jury. Her gaze was calm, almost pleading. When Officer Harris pulled us over, my only thought was to follow his instructions. But then I saw him grab my brother, Marcus, and push him hard against the car. Marcus didn't fight back. He's not that kind of person. He's gentle, kind, and works 2 jobs to help our family. All he did was ask why he was being treated that way. Maya swallowed, her voice catching slightly as she relived the memory. I stepped in because I couldn't stand by and watch someone hurt my brother. I didn't lunge at Officer Harris or attack him. I begged him to stop. I told him, please don't hurt him. But instead of listening, he turned on me too. That's when they arrested me, calling me violent and dangerous. As she spoke, some jurors leaned forward, their expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity. Others exchanged glances, clearly moved by her words. Sarah Chen watched silently, her heart swelling with pride, as Maya found strength she didn't know she had. But Maya wasn't done yet. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small USB drive, holding it up for everyone to see. This is footage from a gas station camera across the street. It shows exactly what happened that night, the truth that's been hidden from you. She handed it to Judge Roberts, who examined it briefly before nodding for the bailiff to play it on the courtroom screen. The video flickered to life, showing the exact moment Harris escalated the situation. The jury watched as he shoved Marcus unnecessarily, his actions aggressive and unprovoked. Then came Maya, stepping between them, her arms raised in a gesture of defense rather than attack. There was no lunging, no violence, just a scared teenager trying to shield her brother. When the video ended, the room was dead silent. Maya continued, her voice stronger now. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for fairness. If this were your child, your sibling, wouldn't you want the truth to come out? Wouldn't you want justice? Then she dropped another bombshell. Turning to face Officer Harris, who sat rigidly in his seat, she said, and there's more. This isn't the first time Officer Harris has acted this way. People have complained about him before, but those voices were ignored. I'm here today to make sure mine isn't. Sarah quickly intervened, handing Maya a folder containing printed copies of the deleted social media posts Jamal had uncovered. Your Honor, these are public statements made by Officer Harris, boasting about intimidating citizens. They speak to his character and should be considered relevant. The prosecutor jumped to his feet, objecting loudly, but Judge Roberts silenced him with a sharp glance. Let the record reflect that these documents have been submitted for review, he said firmly. By the time Maya returned to her seat, the energy in the courtroom had transformed entirely. Doubt clouded the faces of the jurors, while murmurs rippled through the crowd. Officer Harris stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched tightly. For the first time, it seemed possible that the tide might turn in Maya's favor. The courtroom was eerily quiet as Officer Gray Harris took the stand, his polished uniform and confident demeanor making him appear every bit the model law enforcement officer. He swore to tell the truth, his voice steady and authoritative. The prosecutor wasted no time diving into questions, setting the stage for Harris to recount his version of events in vivid detail. Officer Harris, the prosecutor began, can you describe what happened on the night of the incident? Harris leaned forward slightly, adopting a tone of measured seriousness. Yes, sir. I pulled over a vehicle for a broken taillight. A routine stop. When I approached the car, I noticed the driver, Marcus Johnson, seemed agitated. I asked him to step out of the vehicle, but he became uncooperative. That's when Maya Johnson intervened, becoming verbally abusive and physically aggressive. She lunged at me, resisting my attempts to maintain control of the situation. His words painted a clear picture. A chaotic scene where Maya was the aggressor, her actions forcing him to act in self-defense. The jury listened intently, some nodding along as if his story confirmed their suspicions. Sarah Chen watched closely, her eyes narrowing as she prepared for her cross-examination. When it was her turn, Sarah stood slowly, her calm demeanor masking the storm brewing inside her. Officer Harris, she began, her voice soft but deliberate. "You mentioned that Maya lunged at you. Can you clarify? Did she strike you? Did she cause any injury?" Harris hesitated for a split second before responding. "No, ma'am. She didn't cause physical harm, but her actions were threatening and disruptive." Sarah nodded, letting the pause linger just long enough to plant a seed of doubt. "I see. So, no injuries, no medical report filed afterward. Is that correct?" "That's correct," Harris admitted reluctantly. Sarah pressed on, circling back to the dashcam footage. "You stated earlier that the video supports your account. However, we've reviewed it extensively, and it shows significant gaps, missing angles, poor lighting, and muffled audio. How can we trust your version of events when the evidence is incomplete?" Harris shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "The video captures enough to corroborate my testimony." "And yet," Sarah countered, raising an eyebrow, "it doesn't show Maya attacking you. Isn't it possible that your memory of the event has been influenced by stress or bias?" The prosecutor objected immediately, but Judge Roberts allowed Sarah to continue. She moved on to Harris's disciplinary record, carefully navigating the judge's earlier ruling against introducing specific complaints. Instead, she focused on broader patterns. "Officer Harris, have you ever received complaints about your conduct during arrests?" "I'm not aware of any valid complaints," Harris replied stiffly. "No further questions," Sarah said with a small smile, knowing she planted seeds of doubt in the jurors' minds. As Harris stepped down from the stand, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted subtly. For the first time, cracks had appeared in his seemingly airtight narrative, but the real turning point came next. Before the prosecution could call their next witness, Maya made a bold move. Rising from her seat, she addressed the judge directly. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling but resolute, "I would like to speak to the court. I believe it's important for the jury to hear my side of the story firsthand." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her, stunned by her audacity. Judges rarely allowed defendants to address the court outside of formal testimony, but something about Maya's sincerity struck a chord. After a brief pause, Judge Roberts nodded. "Very well, Miss Johnson. You may proceed." Maya took a deep breath, steadying herself as all eyes remained fixed on her. This was her moment, a chance to strip away the layers of lies and reveal the truth. She walked to the center of the courtroom, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. What she said next would leave everyone in the room speechless. The day of the trial arrived, and the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters jotted notes in the back rows. Cameras flashed outside, and spectators filled every available seat. The air was thick with tension, a mix of curiosity and judgment hanging over everyone present. For Maya, stepping into that room felt like walking onto a stage where the entire world was watching and judging her every move. Sarah Chen stood at the defense table, her posture calm but determined. She had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, knowing it would set the tone for everything that followed. When the judge called the court to order, Sarah rose to deliver her opening statement. Her voice was steady as she began painting a picture of what really happened that night. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Sarah started, "this case is not about violence or crime. It's about truth. It's about accountability. And most importantly, it's about fairness." She turned slightly toward Maya, who sat quietly beside her, hands clasped tightly together. Maya Johnson is a 16-year-old girl who did nothing more than try to protect her brother when she saw him being treated unjustly. What you will hear from the prosecution is a distorted version of events, one designed to distract you from the real issue here, Officer Gray Harris's history of misconduct. As Sarah spoke, she walked slowly across the front of the courtroom, making eye contact with each juror. She described how Harris had escalated the situation unnecessarily, ignoring Maya's pleas and using excessive force against Marcus. She highlighted the inconsistencies in his story, pointing out how his timeline didn't match up with the dashcam footage or witness accounts. Though much of their evidence had been ruled inadmissible, Sarah emphasized that the truth couldn't be silenced forever. On the other side of the room, the prosecutor took notes, his expression unreadable. When it was his turn to speak, he wasted no time launching into his narrative. With practiced confidence, he portrayed Maya as a defiant teenager who disrespected authority and attacked a police officer simply because she didn't like being told what to do. He leaned heavily on Harris's testimony, describing him as a dedicated public servant doing his job under difficult circumstances. "This isn't just an isolated incident," the prosecutor said, his voice rising for emphasis. "It's a reflection of a growing disregard for law enforcement in our society. If we don't hold individuals accountable for their actions, we risk undermining the very system that keeps us safe." The contrast between the two sides couldn't have been starker. Where Sarah appealed to empathy and reason, the prosecutor relied on fear and stereotypes. As they wrapped up their statements, the jurors exchanged glances, some nodding thoughtfully while others looked conflicted. For Maya, sitting through both arguments was exhausting. Hearing herself described as a criminal made her stomach churn, but she forced herself to stay focused. This was her chance to show the jury who she really was, not some angry troublemaker, but a scared teenage girl who acted out of love for her family. Every word mattered. Every glance counted, and she knew she couldn't afford to let her guard down. After the opening statements concluded, Judge Roberts reminded the jury of their responsibility to remain impartial and consider only the facts presented during the trial. Then he adjourned the court for lunch, giving everyone a brief reprieve before the real drama began. As Maya and Sarah left the courtroom, supporters gathered around them, offering words of encouragement. "You've got this, Maya," one woman whispered, gripping her shoulder. Another handed her a small sketchbook filled with drawings from local kids inspired by her courage. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as she realized she wasn't alone in this fight. No matter what happened next, she had already sparked something powerful, a movement toward justice that refused to back down. With renewed determination, Maya returned to the courtroom after lunch, ready to face whatever came her way. The battle lines were drawn, and the truth was waiting to be uncovered. Maya wasn't about to let the system silence her. Sitting on the hard cot in her detention cell, she replayed Jamal's discovery over and over in her mind. The gas station footage that showed Officer Harris acting aggressively, the deleted social media posts where he boasted about intimidating people who crossed him. It was proof, undeniable evidence that could turn the tide of her case. But now, because it hadn't been collected officially, the judge had ruled it unusable. Maya felt like screaming at the injustice of it all, but instead, she channeled her frustration into action. Jamal became her lifeline. Every day after school, he visited the library, using its computers to dig deeper into Officer Harris's past. He scoured public records, old news articles, and even anonymous forums where former officers sometimes shared stories. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Harris wasn't just a strict cop. He had a history of complaints filed against him by black residents who accused him of excessive force and racial profiling. Most of these cases had been dismissed or swept under the rug, but Jamal meticulously documented every detail, creating a timeline that painted a troubling picture. While Jamal worked tirelessly outside, Maya focused on what she could do from within the detention center. She wrote letters, pages and pages of them, to anyone who might listen. Local activists, journalists, even lawyers unfamiliar with her case received heartfelt appeals from Maya, explaining what really happened that night. Some ignored her messages, but others responded, intrigued by her determination. A few promised to look into her story, though they warned her not to get her hopes up too high. Sarah Chen, Maya's attorney, noticed a change in her young client during their meetings. Gone was the quiet, defeated girl who had first walked into the courtroom. In her place stood someone brimming with resolve. When Sarah suggested focusing on exposing Officer Harris's misconduct during the trial, Maya nodded eagerly. "We can't let him win this," she said firmly. "If we don't fight back, who will?" To prepare for the trial, Sarah pored over every piece of information Jamal uncovered. She filed motions requesting access to Harris's personnel file, hoping to introduce his disciplinary record as evidence. The prosecution fought back fiercely, arguing that such information was irrelevant and prejudicial. Judge Roberts, a stern man with a reputation for playing by the book, sided with the prosecution, ruling most of the requested documents inadmissible. It was another blow, but Sarah refused to give up. She knew they still had one powerful weapon: Maya herself. As the trial date approached, Maya practiced telling her story over and over again. At first, she stumbled, overwhelmed by nerves and anger. But with Sarah's guidance, she learned to speak calmly yet passionately, emphasizing the fear she felt that night and her desperation to protect her brother. They rehearsed cross-examinations, preparing for whatever accusations the prosecution might throw at her. Maya memorized key points, determined to stay composed no matter how harsh the questions got. One evening, while reviewing the case files, Maya had an idea. What if she addressed the jury directly? Not just answering questions, but speaking straight from her heart. She knew it was risky. Judges rarely allowed defendants to make personal statements, but something inside her whispered it might be their only chance. She pitched the idea to Sarah, who hesitated at first, but eventually agreed it was worth trying. If nothing else, it would show the jury that Maya wasn't some faceless defendant. She was a real person, fighting for justice. The closer they got to the trial, the more Maya realized how much was at stake, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been unfairly targeted by people in power. This wasn't just her battle anymore. It was a fight for truth, accountability, and the belief that even when the odds seemed impossible, standing up for what's right mattered. And Maya was ready to stand taller than ever before. As the days turned into weeks, the case against Maya grew stronger, at least on the surface. Officer Gray Harris' version of events became the official narrative, repeated endlessly in news reports and community meetings. His calm demeanor and polished explanations made him appear trustworthy, while Maya's quiet protests were dismissed as excuses. The prosecution team built their case almost entirely around his testimony, presenting him as a victim of unwarranted aggression. But something didn't add up. For starters, the dashcam footage from Harris's patrol car was far from conclusive. It showed only parts of the incident, with poor lighting obscuring key moments. The audio was muffled, making it impossible to hear exactly what was said during the altercation. Yet, instead of raising questions about its reliability, the prosecution used the fragmented video to support Harris's claims. This footage clearly shows Maya resisting arrest, they argued, despite glaring gaps in the recording. Maya's defense attorney, Sarah Chin, knew she needed more than just skepticism to challenge the charges. She requested access to additional evidence, including any witness statements or nearby surveillance cameras that might have captured the scene. But her efforts hit roadblock after roadblock. Local authorities claimed there were no other cameras in the area, even though residents insisted otherwise. Requests for internal records related to Officer Harris's conduct went unanswered, leaving Sarah frustrated and running out of options. Meanwhile, public opinion continued to sway against Maya. Social media buzzed with harsh comments, many fueled by biased headlines. Some posts labeled her a troublemaker, while others accused her family of raising disrespectful children. Even people who had once been friendly neighbors now avoided Maya's parents, whispering behind closed doors. The Johnsons felt isolated, their pain compounded by the weight of judgment from those who refused to see beyond the headlines. Despite the mounting pressure, Maya refused to lose hope. From inside the juvenile detention center, she spent hours replaying the night in her mind, searching for anything that could help prove her innocence. One name kept coming back to her: Jamal, her best friend since middle school. Jamal wasn't just loyal. He was brilliant with technology, always tinkering with gadgets and finding creative solutions to problems. If anyone could dig deeper into the details of that night, it was him. With limited access to communication, Maya managed to send a handwritten note to Jamal through her mother. In it, she begged him to look into Officer Harris's background and find any proof that might contradict his story. Jamal didn't hesitate. He spent every spare moment combing through social media profiles, local news archives, and online forums. What he uncovered shocked even him. Deleted posts where Harris bragged about putting thugs in their place, and vague threats directed at young people who challenged his authority. Jamal also discovered something else: a gas station located across the street from where the incident took place. Its security camera pointed directly toward the road, potentially capturing everything that happened between Maya, Marcus, and the officers. Excited but cautious, Jamal reached out to the gas station owner, convincing them to share the footage. When he finally watched the grainy video, his heart raced. It showed Officer Harris escalating the situation unnecessarily, shoving Marcus before Maya even stepped in. Armed with this newfound evidence, Jamal rushed to tell Sarah Chen. However, when Sarah attempted to submit the footage as part of Maya's defense, the judge ruled it inadmissible. Since the video hadn't been collected through official channels, it couldn't be used in court. Frustration boiled over as Sarah realized how stacked the odds were against them. Without proper evidence, Maya's fate rested solely on whether the jury believed her word over Officer Harris. For Maya, the rejection felt like another blow in an already unfair fight. Yet, deep down, she clung to a flicker of determination. If the system wouldn't listen to her, maybe she'd have to find another way to make it here. In a quiet little town where everyone knew each other's names, life seemed simple, until one night changed everything. 16-year-old Maya Johnson was just an ordinary girl with big dreams. She loved art, spent hours sketching in her notebook, and had plans to study design after high school. But on a chilly Friday evening, her world turned upside down. Maya's older brother, Marcus, had borrowed their mom's car to run errands. He asked Maya to tag along for company, and she happily agreed. What started as a fun outing quickly spiraled into chaos when they noticed flashing blue lights behind them. Officer Greg Harris pulled them over, claiming the car had a broken taillight. At first, it seemed like a routine stop. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But things took a dark turn moments later. According to Officer Harris, Maya became aggressive when he tried to handcuff Marcus. He claimed she lunged at him, shouting threats and resisting his commands. Panic set in as Harris called for backup, and within minutes, multiple officers arrived at the scene. Maya watched helplessly as her brother was thrown to the ground, his face pressed against the cold asphalt, while she begged them to stop. "I didn't do anything wrong," Maya screamed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, don't hurt him." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Instead of calming the situation, Officer Harris arrested Maya too, accusing her of assaulting him during the altercation. By the time the siblings were hauled off to separate police cars, their small community was already buzzing with rumors. News outlets picked up the story, painting Maya as a violent teenager who attacked a cop. Social media exploded with heated debates, dividing neighbors and friends. For Maya's family, the nightmare was only beginning. Her parents, both hard-working people who taught their children to respect authority, couldn't believe what was happening. They knew their daughter wasn't capable of violence. Yet, no matter how much they protested, nobody listened. The local police department stood firmly behind Officer Harris, dismissing any suggestion that he might have acted improperly. As days passed, the pressure mounted. Maya faced serious charges: aggravated assault against a law enforcement officer. If convicted, she could spend years behind bars. Her family hired Sarah Chen, a young but determined defense attorney, to fight for her freedom. However, even Sarah admitted the odds weren't good. Without solid evidence proving Maya's innocence, it would be nearly impossible to counter Officer Harris' damning testimony. Meanwhile, Maya struggled to process what had happened. Locked in a juvenile detention center, she replayed the events over and over in her mind. She remembered seeing fear in her brother's eyes as Officer Harris tightened the handcuffs. She recalled feeling powerless as the officers ignored her cries for mercy. And now, here she was, accused of something she didn't do, branded a criminal by people who didn't know her at all. The injustice gnawed at her, fueling a fire inside her heart. Maya made a silent promise to herself. No matter how hard the battle got, she wouldn't give up. Somewhere out there was the truth, and she was determined to find it. Little did she know, uncovering that truth would lead to a courtroom showdown unlike anything anyone expected.